The Odyssey Dawn drifted silently into the docking bay of Galactic Concordance Station Theta 9, its sleek hull reflecting the dim glow of nearby stars. The station was a bustling hub where dozens of alien species coexisted under fragile diplomacy. For Lieutenant Boyd, this mission marked her first deep space assignment. She had spent years training as a learning languages that most humans couldn't even pronounce. But despite her qualifications, she felt small standing among the towering diplomats and stoic engineers who dominated the station. Adjusted her uniform nervously as she stepped off the ship. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and her blue eyes darted around the crowded corridor. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she knew one thing for certain: she didn't want to let anyone down. As she made her way to the main briefing room, she passed groups of aliens conversing in tones too high or too low for human ears to process comfortably. Some glanced at her with curiosity, while others barely acknowledged her presence. The briefing room was large and circular, with holographic displays floating above a polished metal table. Representatives from various species sat in silence, waiting for the meeting to begin. Took a seat near the edge of the group, clutching her tightly. The air smelled faintly metallic, a reminder of how far she was from Earth. Across the table, Ensign, a young officer with iridescent scales and sharp teeth, smirked when he noticed her fidgeting. His reputation preceded him. He was known for his arrogance and disdain toward species he considered primitive. When the meeting began, Captain Loris, a seasoned commander with 4 arms and skin like obsidian, addressed the group. "We have received preliminary scans from 4, he said in Standard, the universal language used across the galaxy. "It appears there is evidence of pre-warp civilization. Our goal is to establish communication without disrupting their development." Listened intently, scribbling notes on her. When it came time for introductions, each member of the team briefly described their role. When it was turn, she stood up straight and introduced herself confidently. "I'm Lieutenant Boyd," she said. "I'll be assisting in translating any linguistic data we encounter." Her voice wavered slightly as all eyes turned to her. Determined not to appear weak, she added, "I've studied several ancient dialects and am ready to contribute to this mission." There was a moment of silence before leaned forward, his forked tongue flicking out mockingly. "Ah yes, the human linguist," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Perhaps you can teach us something about your primitive alphabet while we're here." Ignored the jab and forced a polite smile. She knew better than to engage with someone like. Instead, she focused on the task ahead. After the meeting ended, she followed the rest of the crew to the observation deck, where they would review the initial findings from 4. As holograms of icy landscapes and strange symbols filled the room, felt a spark of excitement. This was why she had joined the Concordance, to explore unknown worlds and connect with life forms vastly different from her own. However, her enthusiasm was short-lived. When asked to translate a ceremonial phrase written in script, a gesture meant to honor their culture, she stumbled over the pronunciation. "Try again," Captain Loris instructed patiently. Tried once more, but her accent was still off. A ripple of amusement spread through the room, culminating in open laughter from. He leaned back in his chair, his claws tapping against the armrest. "Well, that was adorable," he sneered. "Perhaps next time you should stick to grunting noises. They suit you better." Heat rose to his cheeks, but she refused to let him see how much his words affected her. She corrected herself one final time, bowing her head respectfully before taking her seat. Around her, the other crew members exchanged glances, some amused, others uncomfortable. No one spoke up in her defense. To everyone, a pair of glowing amber eyes watched the scene unfold from the shadows of the doorway. A juvenile recently rescued during a scouting mission crouched silently just outside the room. Barely waist-high, with silver fur covering his lithe body, had bonded quietly with during transit. He had seen how hard she worked, how tirelessly she studied late into the night. And now, seeing her humiliated by someone like ignited a protective instinct within him. His claws flexed against the cold metal floor as he growled softly under his breath. Humans might be physically weaker than many species, but they possessed qualities far rarer, like kindness and resilience, had shown him both during their journey together. Watching her endure such cruelty without retaliation only strengthened his resolve to stand by her side. For now, though, he remained hidden, observing. There would be time enough to act later. Until then, he vowed silently that no one, not nor anyone else, would harm his friend without facing consequences. As the crew dispersed after the meeting, walked briskly back to her quarters, trying to shake off the sting of embarrassment. She reminded herself that setbacks were part of every mission. What mattered was perseverance. Little did she know, her determination would soon inspire loyalty not just from, but from others who underestimated her strength. The days aboard the Odyssey Dawn passed in a blur of work and quiet determination for Boyd. After the embarrassing incident in the briefing room, she threw herself into her tasks with renewed focus. Each night, long after the rest of the crew had retired to their quarters, she could be found hunched over her desk, poring over ancient dialects. Her glowed softly in the dim light, illuminating her tired face as she cross-referenced symbols and sounds. To some, it might have seemed obsessive, but to, it was essential. She knew that understanding the language of four wasn't just about decoding words. It was about building a bridge between two vastly different worlds. Often joined her during these late-night sessions. The young cub had taken a liking to almost immediately. He would sit quietly on the floor beside her, his silver fur shimmering faintly in the low light. Occasionally, he'd tilt his head curiously as she explained the nuances of standard or asked him questions about phrases. Though he rarely spoke aloud, his presence was comforting. It reminded that she wasn't alone, even when it felt like the entire universe was stacked against her. One evening, as sipped lukewarm synth coffee, nudged her leg gently with his paw, she looked down and saw him holding out a small piece of crystallized ice. "What's this?" she asked, setting her mug aside. "A gift," replied simply, his voice soft and melodic. His eyes shifted from amber to a pale blue, a sign of contentment among his kind. "For you." Smiled warmly, taking the shard of ice. "Thank you, it's beautiful." She turned it over in her hands, admiring the way it caught the light. "Does it mean something special?" He nodded. "It is memory from my home." His expression grew distant and for a moment wondered if she had overstepped. But then he added, "You remind me of it, strong, quiet, unbreakable." Her throat tightened at the compliment. She had never thought of herself as strong, especially not after enduring's mockery, but hearing those words from made her feel differently. For the first time since joining the mission, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she belonged here. Their bond deepened further during an expedition to the icy surface of Four. The crew had been sent to investigate thermal readings emanating from beneath the frozen crust. Armed with scanning equipment and survival gear, they ventured onto the desolate landscape, where jagged peaks loomed like ancient sentinels. The air was biting cold, and every breath stung her lungs, but she pressed on without complaint. As they descended into a narrow crevasse, moved ahead of the group, his keen senses guiding them through the treacherous terrain. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the ice. Before anyone could react, a massive chunk of glacier broke loose above them, hurtling downward with terrifying speed. In an instant, acted. She lunged forward, shoving out of harm's way as the ice crashed behind them, sealing off the entrance to the crevasse. For several heart-pounding moments, the only sound was the creaking of shifting ice. Then Captain Loris's voice crackled over the comms. "Report your status." "We're okay," called back, though her voice trembled. She glanced at who was staring at her with wide, unblinking eyes. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head slowly, his claws flexing against the icy ground. "You saved me," he whispered, his tone filled with awe. "Why?" "Because you're my friend," replied simply, brushing frost from her jacket. "Friends look out for each other." When the rescue team finally reached them hours later, His hands were raw and blistered from exposure to the freezing temperatures. Medics treated her injuries quickly, but refused to leave her side. Even as she lay in the, wrapped in heated blankets, he remained by her bedside, silently placing his forehead against hers, a gesture of loyalty unique to his species. The incident left a lasting impression on both of them, for it reinforced her belief in the importance of trust and cooperation, values she hoped to share with the crew, for it is unwavering devotion to her. He began following her everywhere, his protective instincts growing stronger with each passing day. If anyone dared to question his abilities, they found themselves facing the cub's piercing gaze, or worse, his sharp teeth. Meanwhile, tensions aboard the Odyssey Dawn continued to simmer. Hadn't let up on his campaign to undermine. During meals, he made snide remarks about her primitive methods, often loud enough for others to hear. Some crew members chuckled nervously, while others rolled their eyes at his antics. Despite the hostility, maintained her composure, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her upset. Her patience paid off unexpectedly one afternoon when she stumbled upon a breakthrough. While analyzing data collected from the expedition, she noticed a peculiar resonance frequency embedded within the ruins. At first, she dismissed it as interference, but upon closer inspection, she realized it matched an ancient concordance distress beacon, a discovery that could rewrite history. Excited by her findings, rushed to share them with Captain Loris. However, before she could reach his office, she encountered in the corridor. He smirked at her approach, clearly expecting another opportunity to mock her. "Back so soon," he taunted. "Did you lose your translator again?" Ignoring him, held up her. "I think I've found something important," she said firmly. "It's a signal pattern linked to the ruins. We need to look into it." Scoffed, waving a dismissive claw. "Of course you did. Probably mistook static for actual intelligence. Humans always overestimate themselves." Clenched her fists but kept her temper in check. "You can laugh all you want," she said evenly. "But if I'm right, this could change everything we know about four, and maybe even our place in the galaxy." Smug expression faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered. "We'll see," he muttered, stepping aside to let her pass. Later that evening, as reviewed her findings with Captain Loris, the full significance of her discovery became clear. The resonance frequency suggested that the civilization had once been part of a broader alliance, one that included early human settlers. It was a revelation that challenged centuries of historical assumptions and hinted at a shared legacy between humans and the enigmatic species of four. Captain Loris regarded with newfound respect. "Lieutenant Boyd," he said gravely, "you may have uncovered something extraordinary. If this theory holds true, it could reshape how the Concordance views humanity's role in galactic history." Nodded, feeling a surge of pride despite the challenges she had faced. She glanced toward the doorway, where stood watching silently. His amber eyes gleamed with quiet triumph, as though he already knew what her success meant, not just for her, but for everyone aboard the Odyssey Dawn. In the days that followed, his confidence grew. She continued working tirelessly, refining her analysis and preparing to present her findings to the entire crew. Though disdain lingered, it no longer carried the same weight. With by her side and the promise of groundbreaking discoveries ahead, felt ready to face whatever obstacles lay in her path. And so, beneath the frozen surface of four, bonds were forged, not just between individuals but between cultures. What began as a tentative partnership between a human linguist and a cub evolved into something far greater, a testament to the power of resilience, trust, and the unyielding spirit of exploration. The mess hall of the Odyssey Dawn buzzed with activity, a rare moment of relaxation for the crew after weeks of grueling work. The room was filled with the hum of conversation, the clatter of utensils against trays, and the occasional burst of laughter. Crew members from different species mingled, or at least tried to, around long metal tables. Boyd sat quietly at one corner, picking at her meal of nutrient paste and synthetic greens. She wasn't particularly hungry, but she knew it was important to keep her strength up. Her hands still bore faint scars from the frostbite she'd suffered on 4, a constant reminder of how fragile life could be in deep space. Lay curled up nearby, his silver fur blending almost seamlessly with the dull gray floor. He appeared to be napping, though his ears twitched occasionally, attuned to every sound around him. To most of the crew, the young cub was little more than a curiosity, a rescued alien who had inexplicably bonded with the human linguist. But those who paid closer attention might have noticed the way his eyes followed movements, always vigilant, always protective. Ensign entered the mess hall then, his iridescent scales catching the light as he swaggered toward the food dispensers. His presence seemed to fill the room, not because of his size, but because of the arrogance that radiated off him like heat. He grabbed a tray and loaded it with synth meat and flavored gelatin cubes before scanning the area for a seat. Spotting Alone, he smirked and made his way over, deliberately choosing the chair directly across from her. "Well, well," drawled, setting his tray down with a loud clatter. "If it isn't our resident translator, still trying to decode gibberish, I see." Glanced up briefly, her expression neutral. "Just eating lunch," she replied calmly, taking another small bite of her food. Chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, come now. Don't pretend you're not plotting your next big discovery. Maybe this time you'll actually find something useful instead of wasting everyone's time." His words drew a few snickers from nearby crew members, though many others simply ignored him. Didn't rise to the bait. She had learned by now that arguing with only gave him more ammunition. Instead, she focused on her meal, determined not to let him ruin what little piece she had managed to carve out for herself. But wasn't done. Reaching for a container of synth juice, he deliberately tipped it over, spilling its sticky contents onto his uniform. "Oops," he said mockingly, his forked tongue flicking out in amusement. "Clumsy me. Guess you'll have to clean that up, won't you?" A hush fell over the mess hall as all eyes turned to. Some looked sympathetic, while others seemed eager to see how she would respond. For a moment, simply stared at the stain spreading across her jacket, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. Then, without a word, she reached for a napkin and began wiping the juice away. It was who broke the silence. He rose slowly, his movements deliberate and measured. Every eye in the room shifted to him as he stepped forward, his claws clicking softly against the floor. Though he was small compared to most of the crew, there was something about his posture, his head held high, his glowing amber eyes locked onto, that commanded attention. "Mock her again," said, his voice low and steady, carrying an unnatural depth that sent shivers through the room. "I dare you." The challenge hung in the air like a storm cloud. Froze, his smug grin faltering. He hadn't expected the cub to speak, not in standard at least, and certainly not with such authority. For a moment, no one moved, then leaned forward, baring his sharp teeth in what he clearly intended to be a threatening gesture. "What did you say, fuzzball?" he sneered, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his tone. His lips curled back, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth of his own. His fur bristled slightly, making him look larger than he actually was. "You heard me," he growled. "Do not test me." The tension in the room was palpable. Several crew members exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to intervene or let the situation play out. Even Captain Loris, who happened to be passing through the mess hall, paused in the doorway, watching intently. Hesitated, his confidence wavering. He glanced around the room, perhaps hopping for support, but found none. Finally, he muttered something under his breath and pushed his chair back, standing abruptly. "Fine," he snapped, glaring at, "have it your way, runt." With that, he stormed out of the mess hall, leaving behind a stunned audience. As the room slowly returned to normal, set down her napkin and looked at. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly, her voice tinged with both gratitude and concern. Tilted his head, his eyes softening as they met hers. "Yes, I did," he replied simply. "You are my anchor, and anchors do not break, they hold." felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to argue, to tell him that she didn't need protecting, but the truth was, she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her chest at his words. In a world where she often felt out of place, loyalty was a lifeline, a reminder that she wasn't as alone as she sometimes feared. Later that evening, found in one of the ship's maintenance corridors, sharpening a shard of ice against the bulkhead. The rhythmic scraping echoed faintly in the narrow space. She approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. "What are you doing?" she asked, crouching beside him. "Preparing," replied without looking up, "for whatever comes next." Frowned, preparing for what? He paused, turning to face her. His expression was serious, almost solemn. "There will be challenges ahead. People like they will try to harm you. I must be ready." She placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "I appreciate your concern, but violence isn't the answer. We can handle this together with words, with patience." Studied her for a moment, his eyes shifting from amber to pale blue. Then he nodded slowly. "If that is your wish, I will honor it. But know this, I will always stand between you and those who seek to hurt you." Smiled, feeling a surge of affection for the cub. "Thank you. That means more to me than you know." As they sat together in the quiet corridor, the weight of the day's events settled over them. It was clear that tensions aboard the Odyssey Dawn were far from resolved. Behavior was unlikely to improve anytime soon, and the crew's mixed reactions to discoveries suggested that acceptance wouldn't come easily. But for now, in this small pocket of calm, allowed herself to feel hopeful. With by her side and the promise of groundbreaking revelations ahead, she believed they could overcome anything. And so, beneath the cold metal walls of the ship, an unspoken pact was forged, one built not on power or dominance, but on trust and mutual respect. Whatever storms lay ahead and would face them together, united by a bond stronger than fear or prejudice. The aftermath of the vault's discovery brought a profound shift aboard the Odyssey Dawn. For weeks, the crew had been divided, some skeptical of Boyd's abilities, others indifferent to her efforts. But now, as they sifted through the ancient memory crystals and pieced together fragments of humanity's forgotten past, those divisions began to crumble. The truth was undeniable. Humans weren't newcomers to the galactic stage. They had once been trusted allies, working alongside species like the to build bridges across cultures and civilizations. It was a revelation that forced everyone to reconsider their assumptions, not just about, but about what it meant to belong. Ensign, stripped of his authority and relegated to mundane tasks, became a shadow of his former self. His smug demeanor had vanished, replaced by a quiet bitterness that made him an outcast even among his own kind. Some crew members whispered that he deserved worse, while others felt a pang of pity for him, chose not to dwell on it. She had no desire to see him punished further. Instead, she hoped he would learn from his mistakes. Perhaps one day, he might even find a way to contribute meaningfully to the mission. As for her role, transformed almost overnight. No longer dismissed as a token human representative, she was now regarded as a key figure in unraveling the mysteries of four. Her insights into the memory crystals earned her invitations to high-level discussions with Captain Loris and other senior officers. Even the engineers, who rarely interacted with anyone outside their team, sought her advice when interpreting technical data. It was a far cry from the days when her presence had gone largely unnoticed, or worse, mocked. Remained by her side throughout, his loyalty unwavering. Though he was officially recognized as the emissary, he preferred to stay close to, often accompanying her during meetings or research sessions. His sharp teeth and glowing eyes served as a silent reminder of the bond they shared, a bond built not on dominance but mutual respect. When received the Concordance Medal of Cross-Species Merit in a formal ceremony, stood proudly beside her, his chest puffed out with pride. The medal itself was simple, a small, circular disc etched with symbols representing unity, but its significance was immense. As Captain Loris pinned it to his uniform, he spoke words that resonated deeply with everyone present. Lieutenant Boyd has shown us that true strength lies not in power but in perseverance. She has reminded us why we explore, to connect, to understand, and to honor the bonds that transcend time and space. After the ceremony, found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Crew members who had once ignored her now approached with smiles and congratulations. A young cadet, barely older than, hesitated before stepping forward. His scales shimmered nervously as he stammered out a phrase in Standard. Thank you, Lieutenant, for showing us what is possible." Smiled warmly, recognizing the effort it must have taken for him to speak in a language so foreign to his kind. "Try again," she encouraged gently. "We all start somewhere." Her response drew murmurs of approval from the crowd. Far from mocking the cadet's awkward attempt, she had turned it into a moment of encouragement, a reflection of her belief in second chances and growth. Watching this exchange, nudged her leg affectionately. "You taught me that dignity isn't given," he whispered. "It's shown." In the weeks that followed, life aboard the Odyssey Dawn settled into a new rhythm. With the discovery of the ancient alliance validated, the ship prepared for its next mission, one focused on exploring uncharted regions of space. Was assigned as lead cultural liaison, a role that thrilled her beyond measure. She spent hours preparing for the challenges ahead, knowing that each encounter with a new species would bring fresh opportunities to foster understanding. But amidst the excitement, there were quieter moments too. Late at night, when the corridors were empty and the hum of the engines provided a soothing backdrop, would sit within the observation deck. Together, they gazed out at the endless expanse of stars, marveling at how far they had come, and how much farther they still had to go. "Do you ever wonder what's out there?" asked one evening, pointing to a distant cluster of light. "Beyond everything we know." Tilted his head thoughtfully. "I think there are always more stories waiting to be told, more connections waiting to be made." She nodded, feeling a surge of hope. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be obstacles, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But with by her side and the lessons she had learned along the way, believed they could face whatever came next. As the Odyssey Dawn sailed deeper into uncharted territory, its corridors echoed not with laughter at difference, but with the hum of many voices learning to listen. Exchanged greetings in languages once considered impenetrable. Engineers collaborated across species lines, pooling their knowledge to solve problems. And once an outsider, now walked among them as a symbol of resilience and possibility. Far below, on the icy surface of 4, the vault lay silent once more. But its legacy lived on, carried forward by those who refused to let history remain buried. In uncovering the truth, and had done more than rewrite textbooks, they had reignited a spirit of unity that transcended borders, timelines, and prejudice. And so, beneath the vast and infinite sky, the story of a human linguist and a cub continued, a testament to the enduring power of courage, connection, and the unyielding belief that, no matter how different we may seem, we are stronger together. The Odyssey Dawn hummed softly as it prepared for its next mission, its corridors alive with the sounds of activity. Crew members moved purposefully, their steps echoing against the metal floors. For Boyd, this moment marked a turning point, not just in her career, but in how she saw herself and her place among the stars. Once dismissed as an outsider, she now stood at the center of something far greater than she could have imagined. Her discovery of the ancient alliance between humans and the had changed everything, not only for her, but for the entire concordance. Ensign's fall from grace served as a stark reminder of the consequences of arrogance and prejudice. Stripped of his rank and reassigned to menial tasks, he became a ghost aboard the ship. Some whispered that he deserved worse, while others felt a flicker of pity for him, but chose not to dwell on his fate. She didn't want revenge or further punishment. Instead, she hoped he would learn from his mistakes. Perhaps one day, he might find a way to contribute meaningfully to the mission, though whether he would take that chance remained uncertain. For life aboard the Odyssey Dawn had transformed almost overnight. No longer seen as a token human representative, she was now regarded as a vital member of the crew. Her insights into the memory crystals earned her a seat at high-level discussions with Captain Loris and other senior officers. Even the engineers, who typically kept to themselves, sought her advice when interpreting technical data. It was a far cry from the days when her presence had gone largely unnoticed, or worse, mocked. Remained by her side throughout, his loyalty unwavering. Though officially recognized as the emissary, he preferred to stay close to, often accompanying her during meetings or research sessions. His sharp teeth and glowing eyes served as a silent reminder of the bond they shared, a bond built not on dominance but mutual respect. When received the Concordance Medal of Cross-Species Merit in a formal ceremony, stood proudly beside her, his chest puffed out with pride. The medal itself was simple, a small, circular disc etched with symbols representing unity, but its significance was immense. As Captain Loris pinned it to his uniform, he spoke words that resonated deeply with everyone present. Lieutenant Boyd has shown us that true strength lies not in power but in perseverance. She has reminded us why we explore, to connect, to understand, and to honor the bonds that transcend time and space. After the ceremony, found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Crew members who had once ignored her now approached with smiles and congratulations. A young cadet, barely older than, hesitated before stepping forward. His scales shimmered nervously as he stammered out a phrase in Standard. Thank you, Lieutenant, for showing us what is possible." Smiled warmly, recognizing the effort it must have taken for him to speak in a language so foreign to his kind. "Try again," she encouraged gently. "We all start somewhere." Her response drew murmurs of approval from the crowd. Far from mocking the cadet's awkward attempt, she had turned it into a moment of encouragement, a reflection of her belief in second chances and growth. Watching this exchange, nudged her leg affectionately. "You taught me that dignity isn't given," he whispered. "It's shown." In the weeks that followed, life aboard the Odyssey Dawn settled into a new rhythm. With the discovery of the ancient alliance validated, the ship prepared for its next mission, one focused on exploring uncharted regions of space. Was assigned as lead cultural liaison, a role that thrilled her beyond measure. She spent hours preparing for the challenges ahead, knowing that each encounter with a new species would bring fresh opportunities to foster understanding. But amidst the excitement, there were quieter moments too. Late at night, when the corridors were empty and the hum of the engines provided a soothing backdrop, would sit within the observation deck. Together, they gazed out at the endless expanse of stars, marveling at how far they had come, and how much farther they still had to go. "Do you ever wonder what's out there?" asked one evening, pointing to a distant cluster of light. "Beyond everything we know." Tilted his head thoughtfully. "I think there are always more stories waiting to be told, more connections waiting to be made." She nodded, feeling a surge of hope. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be obstacles, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But with by her side and the lessons she had learned along the way, believed they could face whatever came next. As the Odyssey Dawn sailed deeper into uncharted territory, its corridors echoed not with laughter at difference, but with the hum of many voices learning to listen. Exchanged greetings in languages once considered impenetrable. Engineers collaborated across species lines, pooling their knowledge to solve problems. And once an outsider, now walked among them as a symbol of resilience and possibility. Far below, on the icy surface of 4, the vault lay silent once more. But its legacy lived on, carried forward by those who refused to let history remain buried. In uncovering the truth, and had done more than rewrite textbooks, they had reignited a spirit of unity that transcended borders, timelines, and prejudice. And so, beneath the vast and infinite sky, the story of a human linguist and a cub continued, a testament to the enduring power of courage, connection, and the unyielding belief that, no matter how different we may seem, we are stronger together.